Okay, this is belt tension and fitment on a S2R1000. It's 1000 DS motor. The reason I haven't shown this previously is because the device I was using to film, the iPhone, is what I use to set the belt tension. So now I've got a GoPro, so we'll do the belts. First set the belts up. The mark on the timing shaft lines up with the slot on the primary drive cover, which is horizontal, top dead center firing. It's the master position. Horizontal camshaft. The lump on the cover is here. Mark on the cams here. So let's fit this belt up. When you have the belts off, make sure you check out the all the bearings to make sure they're not damaged or anything. So that's that one on. Just take all the clearance out of it, nip it up. The vertical, the marker's on the cam here, on the cover, so I've got to turn this cam around. This will be on the nose of the inlet lobe pretty much, and so it should just sit almost there, and just put your belt on where it needs to be, let it slide around. And again, just sort of take the clearance out of it so that the belt's not flopping around. And next I turn the engine over quite a few times. Doing this is a way to, if you've just serviced it, help circulate the oil, but it's mainly just let the belts settle where they're going to run. Okay, I just stopped then because I realised I hadn't put oil in it yet. And if you're doing the belt setup like this, often you'll almost get oil pressure just with turning the engine over. I turn the engine over a lot. Okay, so the belts are on. All the dots, all the marks line up. Which these are just all the factory marks. What I do now is I turn it over. For the first time, turn it over gently. It's probably in top gear. Just turn it over really gently to make sure it doesn't stop. If it's going to stop, it'll stop sort of with the timing mark about here and about here, if it is going to stop. But and usually I just line the marks up again, make sure they haven't moved, which they haven't. So now I'll go from 6th gear that I was in the first time I turned it over to 2nd gear. And the reason I do that is simply because I can spin it a lot faster in 2nd than I can in 6th. If you're doing this, turning the back wheel over, just make sure you've got good stomach muscles and you're bracing yourself. I was doing this once to a 999 that turned out had a starter clutch issue, and I really hurt my back, like very seriously hurt my back. Just with the amount of effort I was doing, and I wasn't doing a whole lot of fitness at the time. Now I do a whole lot more core exercises to make sure I don't hurt myself again. So we'll turn it over a few times. The main reason for this is just let the belts settle, let them sit where they want to sit. We'll go back to the dots, which is top dead center on the horizontal. And now I'll just set this in tension on these, like the traditional 2-valve engines. I just push the adjusters together. And that's the base setting. Go into the vertical top dead center firing, which is when the white dot is pointing straight ahead. And do the same thing on this cylinder. Just take all the free play out of it. Turn it over some more. Okay, now I'll set the tension for the first trial. There's a couple of apps you can use. I use Gates Carbon Drive as one. The Gates Carbon Drive can be a little bit odd at times, and I've heard people say it'll pick up the frequency of the fluorescent lights and stuff like that. sometimes you get this constant reading of 48 or 34 hertz, which you know isn't right, but it just what it gives you. But otherwise, it's a pretty good app. On this one, being a sort of 2005 later engine, I'll set the belts to 100 hertz. These belts aren't new belts. These are the belts that were on the bike when it came in. It's for a 36,000k service. They're only a year or so old. When I first pulled it apart and checked it, the horizontal belt was about 120 hertz and the vertical was about 110. Being a 2006 model, I don't go over 100 hertz on these engines. I don't set the belts looser if they're second-hand as opposed to new ones. I would just use 100 hertz all the time. Some people like to say you run used belts at a lower tension. I don't really see any need on these, and I would use 110 hertz, except for this being the later engine. Up to 2005, the 1000 engines were quite happy at 110, and originally we used to use 140 when the sonic method first came in. The DS engines were first released. They were spec'd at 140 hertz on both cylinders. These 2005 or 2005 and a half about engines, they seemed to reduce the thickness of the bearing surface on the left hand end of the camshaft here, and when these things get hot, they get really hot, they can make a really horrid belt noise if the belts are at 140 hertz. So run these at a lower tension, and I like to use 100. That way you're pretty much guaranteed to never have any issue with noise. And as far as I can work out, the noise is the actual cam pushing through the oil film and hitting the head itself, which you don't really want. So 100 hertz for these is where I aim for. So this is the Gates Carbon Drive app. Hold it up here, give it a flick. At 95, and it just resets itself. So that one's about 95 hertz. You can't talk while you're doing it. I'll go around to the vertical. And the vertical, the dot is pointing forward, but one of the holes in the pulley, the second one around from the dot, lines up with the slot in the primary drive cover. And this one, put the phone up here, it's 114. That one's a bit tight. So we'll back this off a little bit. The problem with these is there's not incremental. You just got to undo and release a little and then tighten it up and try it again. The 4 valves are much easier. So once you've made any sort of adjustment, again, turn it over a few times. Back to vertical, top dead center firing. We'll check it again. That's 97 hertz. I've got 31, which is what happens when it picks up weirdness, I think. And 93. So I wouldn't go over 100. So, and because they are used belts, I'm not overly fussed. 93 is fine. Sometimes on these, when you torque up the pivot bolt at the bottom, it can pivot the adjuster a little. So we'll tighten those up. We've got the torque wrench and torque them up. Torque these bolts to 25 Newton meters. Actually, I always pull these bolts out, put some anti-seize on them, just so the threads move nicely. Okay, so they're all torqued. So we'll just spin him over. Let's go back to the horizontal. 91 hertz. Yep, so that's fine. You could go a little tighter if you liked, but again, they are used belts. It's 93.5. So I'll call them fine. You can also use the N-Track Tuner app. This app is a guitar tuning app. As you can see, it's much more live. It's just responding to me talking. So you really do need quiet in your area. Put the microphone end up to the belt and give it a pluck. It's not really working for me. It can be quite a frustrating app. I have purchased it in the past, but then I had to reload it, and I think I've got the free version now. It's not playing the game for me. No. Close it down and start again. See if we can make it work now. You know the tension is going to be about 100 hertz. And you get, this is 100, it's a logarithmic scale, so it's 100, and the next one up, 100, 1,000, 10,000. So we want a peak just about here somewhere. And you get that. So it's around about 95 or so hertz. This one's much more adaptive in how it works, I guess. Or it's not as descriptive. You just you need to know what you're looking for. And you get the peak is about 95. It has the peak and decay function, so you can hold your peaks. So that's N-Track Tuner. A bit more frustrating at times, but also a bit more basic, so it turns to be a good fallback if the gate's carbon drive being a bit weird. Now the other way of tensioning these people often talk about is the hex key methods. It doesn't work on these engines, and it's just, I'm assuming because of the relationship between the cams and the positions of the rollers, in particular this one on the horizontal cylinder. This belt tension's fine, but you can't move it off that at all. And that's realistically, if you just pull those together, gently tighten them up, take the tension out, that's how it'll be. There's no movement off there. And you certainly can't get a hex key through. So that's why, if you had that, so you could get that key through, or a 5mm key through, this belt would be very, very loose. On the vertical cylinder, the top dead center vertical, you possibly could get we got a 5mm, this is a 5, you possibly could get a 5mm through, but it's still a bit of drag on it. So don't use the 5mm methods on these. I don't use that method anyway, I really don't like it. The gentle pull together and take all the free play out is, in my opinion, just a better way to do it. So that's belt tension on a DS style engine.